Hey guys, it's Jenny with tHEARTistry, and today I'm going to be doing a Mega Man 2 watercolor painting. This is the request I have, and I'm just going to tell you what an awesome day it's been. It was a wonderful morning. I let myself sleep in until 7:30, so I'm happy. So what I'm doing is right now I'm using this watercolor paper that I got from the art store. And it's kind of nicer because it's got the texture on it. And I mean, if you're going to paint with watercolor and you're doing it for the first time, you don't have to go buy paper just to try it out. You can do it on any paper, printing paper, just to get used to it first. Figure out if it's something you want to do. So the first thing, the first thing I normally would do is I would take some painter's tape and just tape all around here. I typically like that a little border. And I can't find my masking tape, of course. This is what happens. You gotta keep track of your stuff. I can't find it anywhere, and I don't want to use this crappy stuff. So I decided this time I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to paint directly without taping. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out very, very lightly what I want to paint. It's kind of good to start off with an idea in your head of where things are going to go. Otherwise, you could mess up and it's a little harder to fix after. So I'm going to do this scene here. And it's just a really large fish. Actually, I do want to do this bottom part here, and I want to get my ruler because I'm not that great at drawing straight lines. And I can admit to that. It's not that easy drawing a straight line. Okay. So I want to get kind of the proportion down. I want to get most of that flooring, and it's almost a fourth of the picture. That's a decent amount. But I don't want the bottom to take the whole picture, so I'm just going to make it like 2 inches. Or maybe I should do 2.5. I think I'll do 2.5. Okay, so I drew a line of where the ground is going to be, and now I'm just going to very lightly start drawing the fish. That's kind of like the big item in this picture, and I can even exaggerate it even more and make it even bigger. You're probably not going to even be able to see these lines because it's going to be so light. Yeah, you could barely even see that. I almost feel like I should do it darker just so you guys can see. I probably will just try to do it. Let's see. Yeah, you can kind of see that a little bit. Okay, so I'm already seeing, I feel like it's not to make the fish a little bit bigger. Looks a little bit better. And then you want to erase the lines that you're not using, because with watercolor, sometimes those lines will show through. So I'm just going to do like a few basic parts. I'm not going to draw out everything to the T because you're going to be painting that anyways. But just to get an idea of where things are. I'm having coffee right now because I did not have it this morning. So I'm going to let myself have coffee right now. I try to stay away from coffee later on in the day because it'll keep me up. But I will have to deal with that a little later. Okay, so this has got a big eye, really big eye. Like, and it's not my intention to copy this perfectly. I want it to be a little bit different. I don't want it to be perfect. Otherwise, I might as well just print it out. So I want it to have a kind of a different like feel to it, a watery feel to it. And little box here. Okay, so I can't see the tail, and I'm not going to, that's okay, I'm going to leave the tail out. Now I'm making sure I have the mouth. Using a different table today, and it's a little, gets too much movement. I almost want to make this mouth a little bit bigger. And that's why it's good to start with the pencil. You can get an idea of what it's going to look like before you start painting. All right, I think that looks better. Okay, now I'm going to just draw Mega Man. And he looks really small over here, so I'm going to make him just a little bit bigger, like I know that they're trying to exaggerate the fish. And it's kind of hard to draw something when it's so pixelated, like you almost have to make up what you think it should be in your mind, because I don't want this to be pixelated when I paint it. I may look up another picture of Mega Man later to do this part. I wouldn't mind getting a little more detail. I know that it doesn't have it, but now I'm just going to make the shrimp here. I'm just doing a really light outline because okay. So let's see. I think I'm going to start on the fish and I'm going to get into the detail of this bottom part later. So what I've got here is coffee. And okay, so I have 2 cups of water, just regular tap water. One is going to be my white water, meaning my clean water. I'm not going to ever clean my brushes in it. That's going to be this one. So, and this is to clean my brushes off. So you want to keep 2 separate ones because if you're cleaning off your brushes in your white water or your clean water, it's going to start muddying your painting. And you don't want your painting to look muddy. Okay, let's see. I bought this watercolor set from the art store. It's called Winsor & Newton. And it came with a bunch of small, I haven't done watercolor in a really long time, so I was like, I'm not going to buy a super expensive set. I'm just going to buy something that is going to work for me just to, you know, mess around again with watercolor. I mainly do oils, been doing oils and drawing. So watercolor was, you know, me just retesting out. I really haven't painted with watercolor since I was like in grade school. Like that's how long it's been. And then I did a couple pieces. If you check out my portfolio, I did a few pieces with watercolor that I thought came out pretty well just in recently, like the last couple months. And so I'm like, I'm going to mess around with this a little more. So let's see, we can mix this. It kind of looks almost a reddish pink. This one is crimson. So I'm going to just blot a little bit right there. Oh, I don't think you could see that. The thing with this watercolor is that it dries pretty quick, so I put it just a tiny bit there. And I have this dropper, so I can put water and add water to it. You don't need the dropper though. I mean, I just had this. I happen to have it. But you can always just add water with your paintbrush. So let's see. I want to make sure I leave. So I'm going to mix this slowly into the water to get it a little bit darker. And I also have just some scrap paper. We can always test out the color first before we use it. I want it a little darker than that. But I do want some light spots here. So I want to start off light and slowly add paint. That looks like a good color right there. And I'll slowly add paint and make it darker and darker. I'm going to, there are some reflective spots here. And I'm just going to mark where those are so I remember not to paint on those. So those are going to remain white. So now I'm just going to start painting. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off light. Actually, I should do darker towards the middle, and I think I'm going to do lighter on the outside. So I'm just going to start painting the outside just really light. Sometimes it feels like when you look at an object, you think that the background is darker because you associate shadows with the sides. But if you really look at an object, usually the part that's the closest to you is like the darkest or the most vibrant in color. Now this is a little bit light right now. I think I'm going to just finish the outline here, and then I'm going to make it darker. Now there are shadows here, and I will probably incorporate that later. The good thing about watercolor is you can paint over it as you go, so you can always add more to it. So I'm trying to make this a little bit darker now. adding more paint to it. And I really want it darker around the eyes. Now I got really dark. It kind of went from light to very dark, and that's okay. What you can do is you can always add a little water to have that blend start blending. So I'm just right now I'm just adding water here, just regular water to have it blend and go from like darker to the lighter. So there's a transition rather than just going from just suddenly, you know, dark to light. And what's cool is when there's a lot of water, it just starts bleeding. And the thing with watercolor is sometimes you have less control with it because of the water, but it actually ends up being really pretty to not have full control. Like allow it to do its thing. It's sometimes it turns out nicer that way, just allowing the water to make your piece. Now I'm going back to some of the darker area again. And there's a lot of ways you can paint with watercolor. You could have, added water to this whole painting first or to the paper first and then add paint to it as you go. That's another way to do it. I've tried it that way too. The only thing is that the water does start drying pretty quick, so you kind of have to paint quickly if you're going to be doing that. I'm still trying to decide if I want to do the black outlines on everything. I typically don't like to do that because those black lines don't really exist. I mean, they exist on the picture, but like realistically, there aren't black lines around us. So I'm going to just paint this first, and then at the very end, if I feel like it needs the black outlines, I will add those. Now, as it dries, it's going to get lighter and lighter. I want it, almost want it a little more darker still, so I'm going to add a little more paint to this and try to keep it separate from the water. And I want this area here really dark. Still trying to decide for the tail if I'm going to make this darker back here. And you have to check back and look at your picture, or else you might accidentally paint over something that's supposed to be white. I have done that before. I forgot because this isn't, I can move my paper around as I please since I haven't taped it down this time. Sometimes it's easier to get a better angle if you move it around. Get some better lines. Make it just a little bit darker too, like around the mouth. Maybe at the bottom here. Yeah, I'm thinking a little darker at the bottom here too. There's like a black mark right here. Just need to stand back and take a look. There's needs to be a little more transition here. The water, I mean, the water did its thing, so I mean, maybe I should just leave it. Don't want to put too much water on it. As you can see, it's already starting to get a little bit wavy. Okay, so let's see. Now I'm going to also do, he's got some bags under his eyes, kind of like mine. And they're the same color, but I feel like I should add, let's see. Oh, should I make it a different color a little bit? Maybe add a little orange to it. Let me see what that looks like. This is burnt sienna. I'm going to clean my brush here and dry it off. Get a paper towel. And I think I'm going to just try mixing a little of the red with a little of the burnt sienna and see how that looks. Now it looks a little bit more orange. I'm just going to add a little water to it. And then I think I'm going to put all the burnt sienna in. See if we can get it a little darker, a little more brown orange. That one looks a little more orange. I think I'm going to use that. Here I think we need some of those dark lines too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little brown. Or should I use black? I'm going to see what it looks like with brown first. I think that's going to work. Let me do this first. So while it's wet, I'm going to add some of this brown to it on the outsides, and I want it to bleed into the orange. Sometimes I just need a little more water to get that to bleed together. going to make this area a little bit darker. And have it transition and get lighter. Now the red is already pretty much dry on here, which is good because I don't want this brown bleeding into the red. And I'm just making decisions as I go here. I mean, I'm just winging it. Sometimes it turns out well, sometimes it doesn't. All right, it's turned off. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make it a little darker right here so you can see that bag. And then transition into the lighter. The lighter color. Now this is still a little wet, so now it's bleeding into each other, so I might need to go over that again. I'm gonna probably come back to that because I need to allow it to dry a little bit. Yeah, it's just bleeding into each other right now. Which that might actually end up looking cool anyway, so we'll see what it looks like when it dries. But yeah, it's a little too wet, too much water right now, so I'm gonna move on to the pupil. Now it's red. It's almost, let's see, there's a light orange right in the middle of it. So I'll do that first. And then clean off my brush. And let's make this, it seems kind of boring to use the same red color we've been using. Maybe we'll add a little black to it. And I'm barely just dabbing like the amount of paint I need here because you don't really need a lot of paint. Like it goes a very long way. So I'm going to grab a little of that black paint and mix it with the red paint. Let's see how that looks. And it's got a darker feel to it, which is good. I think that's what I'm going to do for this for the eye. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to see. Since we have some of our orange going here, I might as well just do the fin parts. I want the fins to be a little more yellow though. I'm going to add some yellow to that. So I'm going to clean my brush off. I have all these other brushes, but I always end up using the same brush over and over again. Okay, so I want, let's see, make sure that yellow looks perfect there. So there's going to be a transition from yellow to orange on this. Okay, so I probably didn't even have to wash that off. I'm going to now put the orange on, and I've decided I was going to use this orange at first, but let's see, this orange is a little bit brighter. I think this will look nice, a little bit better. So yeah, I've got, I don't want to mix the orange and the yellow because I've got yellows over here too that I want to use. So that looks pretty good. I almost need a little more water. I think I put too much water now. And that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to soak up the water a little bit with my paper towel. Try not to get the paint. And now it's too much paint, of course. But that's okay. You know what? Let's see what this ends up looking like. Might end up looking kind of cool. Want to add a little more yellow to it and let them bleed into each other. Oh yeah, that's very, I actually really like that. That mistake came out. Sometimes mistakes come out well. Now it looks really good right now for me, but I think when it dries it's going to get lighter, so we'll see what it looks like. I am now going to do this horn section because it's got yellow in it too. Yellow and orange in it too, so Don't want to waste that paint, might as well use it, right? Okay, now I'm going to clean off my brush and get some of that orange in there while it's still wet. I'm just going to use, I cleaned off my brush and I'm just using it now to kind of move the paint around so that the colors are transitioning well. And I think I'm going to add a little black to this to make it a little more defined. Or brown. Brown would work too. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the brown instead of the black. Get a little brown here. And I'm just going to add just to the edges to get this a little more defined. Instead of using black, it just creates a little shadow. I think in most of my paintings, I try to refrain from using black because it just flattens the picture or the painting. Usually, like shadows are gray versus black, so I'll use either a brown or a gray to create the shadow. I only use black maybe if I'm really trying to create some like contrast. So that's coming out pretty cool so far. I feel like that was really quick and easy too. Let's see, now I need to decide. Might as well just add this ball at the end and this part. This part is still red here. I think let's make that a little bit darker. See, my black's almost dried on me here now. Got to add more water to it to get it going. Ah, you know what? There was a white reflective spot just right here that I missed. So I'm going to try to add it in here. Let's see. Problem with this is the white watercolor really does nothing for you. So I can't really add white back in there now. I'm just going to move this around because it's easier for me to do a steady line. And I think I'm going to add a little more black to the bottom of this to kind of define. Get that a little more defined. Okay, and then I'm gonna do this ball right here that's, oops, emitting, got like a red circle around it too. This is like almost orange here. Go back to the orange. Actually, need to clean off my brush first. Try not to get this muddy. Actually, I don't, you know what, before it dries, I'm just gonna clear it out. I don't, see, you could just wipe it off. If you messed up, you could just wipe it off before it dries. There is another reflective spot here that I almost missed again. So, drying off my paintbrush, and it's like a very light yellow. So I'll do that first. And then I almost want that to dry. I'm going to let that dry first, and then I'll paint around it. So I'll move on to these fins here. And the fins have a reflective white piece on each of them, and then they have red. So I'm going to do the red. I think these can be a little darker too. I'm adding a little black where the fins meet the body. And I'm just going to do the same thing on the other fins. So it looks like I've run out of time, but I am going to finish this later on. I'm not going to be on until next week because I've got a really busy weekend. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. If you ever have any ideas or suggestions, please let me know. And I'll see you guys next week. All right. I hate to waste the rest of this paint, but I gotta get going.